The alarm clock screamed at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before it was supposed to. Elena Martinez's hand shot out from under the thin comforter, silencing the piercing sound before it could wake Sophia. The small apartment in the South Bronx was quiet except for the distant rumble of the 6 train and the persistent drip from the kitchen faucet she couldn't afford to fix. Elena lay still for a moment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, calculating. Rent was due in 5 days. Sophia's asthma medication would run out by the end of the week. The notice from the hospital about the outstanding balance from last month's emergency room visit sat on the kitchen counter like a ticking time bomb. $3,417. She'd memorized the number, though she tried not to think about it. 28 years old, and this was her life. She rolled out of bed carefully, her body aching from yesterday's double shift at Vittorio's. The restaurant paid better than most places would hire her without a college degree, and they didn't ask too many questions about the 3-year gap in her work history. Those 3 years, pregnancy, a difficult birth, and the aftermath of discovering that Sophia's father had disappeared the moment things got real, felt like a lifetime ago. Elena moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. Shower in 4 minutes to save on the hot water bill, hair pulled back in a tight bun, minimal makeup, just enough to look professional, not so much that it seemed like she was trying too hard. Her uniform hung on the back of the bathroom door. Black slacks, white button-down shirt, both ironed the night before. She'd learned early that looking put together was half the battle in a place like Vittorio's. She paused at Sophia's door, pushing it open just enough to see her daughter's small form curled under the butterfly comforter. 6 years old and already so independent it sometimes broke Elena's heart. Sophia had learned not to complain when Mommy worked late, not to ask for things they couldn't afford, not to make noise when Mommy was tired. No child should have to be that understanding. "I love you, baby girl," Elena whispered, though Sophia couldn't hear her. "Everything I do is for you." The morning air hit Elena's face as she emerged from the subway station at Columbus Circle. November in Manhattan had a particular bite to it. Not quite winter, but autumn making its final sharp-edged statement. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and walked the 4 blocks to Vittorio's, her breath forming small clouds in the pre-dawn darkness. Vittorio's occupied a corner building in the theater district, its red brick facade and green awning projecting old-world elegance. During the day, it served tourists and business lunches. But at night, especially on Thursdays, it transformed into something else entirely. The kind of place where conversations happened in low voices, where certain tables were always reserved, where the staff knew to see nothing and remember less. Elena had worked there for 2 years, long enough to understand the unspoken rules, long enough to recognize the regular customers who came for more than just the osso buco. "Morning, Elena," called out Carlos, the morning prep cook, as she entered through the back entrance. The kitchen was already alive with activity, the smell of fresh bread baking, the rhythmic sound of knives against cutting boards, the hiss of onions hitting hot oil. "Morning, Carlos. Coffee ready?" "When is it not?" He grinned, gesturing to the industrial coffee maker in the corner. "You look tired, chica. Another late night?" Sophia had a bad night. Asthma acting up again. Elena poured herself a cup, the warmth seeping into her cold hands. "She's okay now, though. Mrs. Chen is watching her today." Mrs. Chen was their neighbor, a widow who looked after Sophia when Elena worked the early shift. The arrangement worked because Elena helped Mrs. Chen with her grocery shopping and translated her mail. It was how people survived in their building, trading favors because none of them had money to spare. "That girl is lucky to have you," Carlos said, his tone serious now. He had 3 kids of his own and understood the weight of single parenthood. "I'm lucky to have her," Elena corrected, taking a long sip of the coffee. It was stronger than most people liked, but that's exactly what she needed. At 10:30 a.m., the front-of-house staff gathered in the main dining room for the daily briefing. Elena stood with the other servers. Rachel, a drama student working her way through NYU. James, a middle-aged man who'd been in the restaurant industry for 20 years. And Marco, the head waiter who'd been at Vittorio's since it opened 15 years ago. Marco stood at the front, his usually impeccable appearance somehow off. Elena noticed it immediately, the way he kept adjusting his collar, how his hands trembled slightly as he held the reservation book. His olive skin looked pale under the chandelier light, and there were dark circles under his eyes that concealed poorly with makeup. "Quiet night tonight," Marco announced, his voice controlled but tense. "We have the usual reservations. The Goldstein anniversary party at 6, the Henderson corporate dinner at 7. But our main focus is the private dining room. A subtle shift went through the staff. The private dining room meant one thing. Mr. Russo has reserved it for 8 o'clock. Party of 6. Standard menu with the wine pairing. Marco's eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on Elena. Elena, you'll be serving the private room tonight. Elena's stomach dropped. In 2 years, she'd never been assigned to serve the private dining room. That was always Marco's domain, occasionally Rachel's when Marco needed backup. Marco, I don't... She started. You'll be fine. He cut her off, his tone sharp. Then, softer. Just follow protocol. Be invisible. Refill glasses before they're empty. Answer questions if asked, otherwise stay silent. And Elena, he paused, his jaw tightening. See nothing. Remember nothing. Understand? She nodded, though her heart was racing. Vincent Russo. She'd seen him before, of course. A tall man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. He moved through the restaurant like he owned it, which, rumor had it, he partially did. He was always polite to the staff, tipped generously, and had a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was also, according to every whispered conversation Elena had overheard, one of the most dangerous men in New York. Elena's preparation. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Elena reviewed the menu for the private dining room, an 8-course tasting menu featuring seasonal ingredients, each course paired with carefully selected wines. She studied the pronunciation of each dish, memorized the ingredients for allergy purposes, and rehearsed in her head how she would present each course. At 6 p.m., she changed into the evening service uniform, a more formal version of the daytime attire, with a black vest and a crisp white shirt with French cuffs. She checked her appearance in the staff bathroom mirror. Professional, composed, invisible. You okay? Rachel asked, touching up her lipstick at the next sink. You look nervous. First time serving the private room, Elena admitted. Rachel's expression shifted to something between sympathy and concern. Just remember what Marco said. Don't engage unless they engage you first. Don't react to anything you hear. And whatever you do, don't make eye contact with Russo for longer than necessary. He notices everything. That's comforting, Elena muttered. Hey, you'll be fine. Marco wouldn't have chosen you if he didn't think you could handle it. Rachel squeezed her shoulder. Plus, the tips are insane. Last time I served that room, I walked out with $300. For one night. $300. Elena thought of Sophia's medication, the hospital bill, the rent. Maybe this was a blessing in disguise. At 7:45 p.m., Elena entered the private dining room to do the final setup. The room was separated from the main restaurant by heavy velvet curtains and soundproofed walls. A single long table dominated the space, set with Vittorio's finest china and crystal. Candles flickered in silver holders, casting dancing shadows on the dark wood paneling. She went through her checklist methodically. Water glasses filled, wine glasses positioned correctly, napkins folded into perfect triangles, fresh flowers centered on the table, white roses, elegant and neutral. Everything had to be perfect. Marco appeared in the doorway, checking his watch. His nervousness had intensified throughout the day. Now, in the dim light of the private room, Elena could see sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool temperature. Marco, are you okay? She asked quietly. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, fear mixed with something else. Resignation, maybe? Or guilt. I'm fine, he said, though his voice was hoarse. Just remember what I told you. Be professional. Be invisible. I know. I've got this. Good. Good. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its usual perfect styling. The wine is ready at the bar. I've already selected the bottles for each course. When you're ready to serve each wine, I'll have them poured and ready on the service tray. It was unusual for Marco to handle the wine personally. That was typically the sommelier's job. But Elena didn't question it. Maybe he just wanted everything perfect for such an important client. At exactly 8 p.m., Vincent Russo arrived. Vincent Russo's entrance. Elena watched from behind the velvet curtain as Russo entered the main dining room. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd never had to question his place in any room. His charcoal suit was custom-tailored, probably worth more than Elena made in 6 months. But it was his presence that commanded attention. The way conversations quieted as he passed. How other diners instinctively gave him space. He wasn't alone. 5 men accompanied him, all dressed similarly, all carrying themselves with that same measured danger. Elena recognized two of them from previous visits, Anthony and Sal, who always sat flanking Russo like bookends. Marco greeted them at the entrance to the private dining room, his professional mask firmly in place despite the tremor in his hands. Elena stepped back into the shadows, making herself invisible as she'd been taught. "Mr. Russo, welcome. Your table is ready." Marco's voice was steady, a professional courtesy. "Thank you, Marco." Russo's voice was surprisingly warm, almost friendly. "How's your mother? I heard she was unwell." Marco seemed startled by the personal question. She's better. Thank you for asking, sir." "Good. Family is everything, Marco. Remember that." There was something in the way Russo said it. Not a threat exactly, but a weight to the words that made them feel significant. Marco nodded, his face pale. The men filed into the private room and Elena's evening truly began. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Elena moved through the room with practiced grace, presenting each course with quiet professionalism. The first course, oysters with champagne mignonette. The second, roasted beet salad with goat cheese and candied walnuts. The third, homemade pasta with white truffle shavings. The men's conversation flowed around her like water around a stone. They talked about legitimate business, real estate developments, restaurant franchises, construction projects. But underneath the normal words, Elena sensed the real conversation, the one happening in glances and meaningful pauses. Vincent Russo sat at the head of the table, engaging with his companions but somehow always aware of everything in the room. Twice, his dark eyes flickered to Elena as she served, assessing her with the kind of attention most people reserved for important documents. She kept her expression neutral, her movements efficient. "Excellent service," he commented as she cleared the third course. "What's your name?" Elena paused, meeting his eyes briefly. "Elena, sir." "Elena." He seemed to taste the name. "You're new to this room." "Yes, sir. First time." "Well, you're doing an excellent job. Please give my compliments to Marco for the selection." "Thank you, sir. I will." As she left the room with the empty plates, her heart was pounding. Rachel had been right. He noticed everything. It was during the fourth course, pan-seared halibut with lemon caper butter sauce, that Elena first noticed something was wrong. She'd gone to the bar area to collect the wine for the next pairing, where Marco had told her the bottles would be prepared. The space was separated from the main dining room by a partial wall, giving the bartender privacy to work. Marco was there, standing over a silver tray with 6 crystal wine glasses already poured with a rich ruby-red wine. But it was Marco's behavior that caught Elena's attention. He stood frozen, staring at the glasses with an expression of absolute terror. His hands shook violently as he reached for something in his pocket. A small vial, clear glass with a dark liquid inside. Elena stepped back behind the wall, her server's instinct telling her to observe without being seen. Marco looked around furtively, then uncapped the vial. His face was white, tears actually streaming down his cheeks. His lips moved in what looked like a prayer or an apology. Then, with hands that shook so badly he almost dropped it, he tilted the vial over one specific glass, the one positioned at what would be the head of the table, where Vincent Russo sat. 3 drops fell into the wine, clear, almost invisible in the dark liquid. Marco recapped the vial quickly, shoved it back in his pocket and stood there for a moment, his whole body trembling. Then he seemed to pull himself together, straightening his shoulders, wiping his face roughly with his sleeve. Elena's mind raced. She'd just witnessed, what, poisoning? That couldn't be real. This was Manhattan in 2024, not some medieval court drama. People didn't poison each other's wine, but the fear on Marco's face had been real. The tears had been real. And suddenly a dozen small observations from throughout the day clicked into place like puzzle pieces. Marco's nervousness, his pale complexion, the way he'd insisted on handling the wine personally, his strange comment to her earlier, "See nothing, remember nothing." He'd known. He'd known what he was going to do, and he'd been terrified all day. The question was, had he chosen to do it or had someone forced him? Elena stood frozen behind the wall, her heart hammering so loudly she was sure someone would hear it. Marco had disappeared, probably to the bathroom to compose himself. The tray with the 6 glasses sat on the bar counter, the contaminated glass distinct in her mind though indistinguishable to the eye. She had maybe 2 minutes before Marco would return or someone would come looking for her. Every survival instinct Elena possessed screamed at her to walk away, to pretend she'd seen nothing. Marco had been right. See nothing, remember nothing. It was the first rule of working at a place like Vittorio's. Mind your own business. Don't ask questions. Don't get involved. Vincent Russo was a criminal. She knew it. Everyone knew it. Even if he'd never been convicted of anything, he probably deserved whatever was coming to him. The world might actually be a better place without him. And if she got involved, if she somehow interfered, what would happen to her? To Sophia? Sophia. The thought of her daughter crystallized everything. Elena thought about the choices she'd made every single day since Sophia was born. The sacrifices, the late nights, the aching feet and strained back, the humiliation of counting pennies at the grocery store, the terror of every cough and wheeze from Sophia's bedroom. She'd made all those choices based on one principle: do what's right for Sophia. Protect Sophia. Give Sophia a better life than Elena had. And what kind of life would Sophia have if her mother stood by and watched a man be murdered and did nothing? What kind of person would Elena be teaching her daughter to become? Elena thought about Marco's tears. Someone had forced him into this. She was sure of it. Maybe threatened his family, his elderly mother he'd mentioned. Marco wasn't a killer. He was a victim too, forced to choose between impossible options, just like Elena was now. But there was a difference. Marco had chosen to go through with it, even in tears. Elena still had a choice. She thought about the hospital bill on her kitchen counter, the medication Sophia needed, the rent, the endless, crushing weight of poverty that defined every moment of her existence. If she got involved, if she somehow made an enemy of whoever had forced Marco to do this, she could lose everything. Worse, they could hurt Sophia. But if she did nothing, she'd have to live with the knowledge that she'd let a man be killed right in front of her. Both choices felt impossible. Elena closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and thought about what she would want Sophia to do if she were in this position someday. What values was she teaching her daughter through her actions? The answer came clearly. You do the right thing, even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying. Because the moment you start compromising your morals for safety, you've already lost everything that matters. Elena's hands moved before her mind had fully processed the decision. She grabbed a bar napkin and a pen from the server station, her fingers trembling so badly she could barely write. The words came out shaky but legible. Don't drink that. It's not fear I smell, it's poison. She folded the napkin small, clutching it in her palm. Then she picked up the service tray with the 6 wine glasses, balancing it carefully. One wrong move and she'd spill them all. And then what? Would Marco pour new glasses? Would he add the poison again? The walk back to the private dining room felt like miles instead of feet. Each step was an opportunity to turn back, to change her mind, to choose safety over morality. But Elena kept walking. At the entrance to the private room, she paused to compose herself, professional, invisible, just doing her job. She pushed through the velvet curtain. The conversation in the room continued as she entered, something about construction permits and city council members. Elena approached the table, her professional smile fixed in place, though her heart was trying to break through her ribs. "Gentlemen, the next pairing is a 2015 Barolo," she announced, her voice remarkably steady. "It's a full-bodied red with notes of cherry, truffle, and tobacco. It pairs beautifully with the next course." She moved around the table, placing a glass in front of each man. Anthony, Sal, the others whose names she didn't know. Each placement brought her closer to the head of the table, closer to Vincent Russo, closer to the point of no return. Finally, she stood beside Russo's chair. He was mid-sentence, explaining something about zoning regulations to Sal. Elena placed the wine glass gently on the table in front of him. Then, as she adjusted the positioning with one hand, she let the folded napkin slip from her other hand onto his lap, hidden beneath the table's edge. Her fingers barely brushed the fabric of his expensive suit pants as she guided the napkin to rest on his leg, where it would look like a fallen napkin if anyone noticed, but would be immediately apparent to him. She stepped back, her role complete. "Please enjoy. The 5th course will be out shortly." As she turned to leave, she felt it, the weight of Vincent Russo's attention shifting fully onto her. The room's temperature seemed to drop. The conversation continued around him, but she knew with absolute certainty that he had felt the napkin drop, and he was already questioning what it meant. Elena walked out of the private room with measured steps, not allowing herself to rush, not allowing herself to show any emotion. Only when she was safely behind the velvet curtain did she let herself breathe. What had she done? Elena escaped to the kitchen, her mind reeling. Carlos looked up from the grill where he was preparing the next course. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Elena lied. Just a headache. I think I need some air. Take 5 minutes. I'll cover for you if anyone asks. Elena nodded gratefully and slipped out the back door into the alley behind the restaurant. The November cold hit her like a slap, but she welcomed it. She needed something to ground her, to prove this was real and not some surreal dream. She'd just accused a mafia boss of being poisoned by his own head waiter in his own regular restaurant. If she was wrong, she'd humiliated herself and probably lost her job. If she was right, she'd just saved a killer's life and potentially signed her own death warrant. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Mrs. Chen. Sophia sleeping now. Had good dinner. Don't worry. Sophia. Everything always came back to Sophia. Elena allowed herself exactly 3 minutes to panic. Then she straightened her spine, wiped her eyes, and went back inside. Whatever happened next, she'd face it. She had to, because she'd made her choice. What Elena didn't see was what happened inside the private dining room after she left. Vincent Russo had indeed felt the napkin drop onto his lap. His first instinct was that it was an accident. Servers dropped things occasionally, but something about the deliberate way the young waitress had placed it, the way her fingers had guided it to rest on his leg rather than the floor, made him pause, mid-sentence. Without drawing attention to himself, he reached down and felt the napkin. It was folded, deliberately. Not an accident, then. He continued his conversation with Sal about the zoning permits, his tone never changing, his expression remaining engaged and friendly. But his right hand unfolded the napkin in his lap, and his eyes briefly dropped to read the words. Don't drink that. It's not fear I smell. It's poison. Vincent Russo had survived 42 years in a business where paranoia was wisdom and trust was suicide. He'd avoided more attempts on his life than most people could imagine. He knew every trick, every play, every gambit his enemies might use. This was new. A warning from a waitress. A woman he'd never spoken to before tonight. Someone with nothing to gain and everything to lose by getting involved. Which meant either she was part of an elaborate setup, or she was genuinely trying to help. Vincent's eyes went to his wine glass. Ruby red, beautiful, innocent looking. Then to the glasses in front of his companions. Identical. He thought about Marco's behavior tonight. The head waiter had served him dozens of times over the years. Always professional, always competent. But tonight, Marco had been nervous. Vincent had noticed but attributed it to normal performance anxiety. He made people nervous. It was the nature of his reputation. But what if it was more than that? Vincent made his decision in the space of 3 heartbeats. Gentlemen, he said, standing smoothly. Excuse me for a moment. Anthony, could you join me? He picked up his wine glass as he stood, which made Anthony automatically reach for his own glass to follow suit. They stepped away from the table, Vincent's hand on Anthony's shoulder, in a gesture that looked friendly, but allowed him to guide his most trusted associate to the far corner of the room. Try this, Vincent said quietly, handing his glass to Anthony. Tell me what you think of the pairing. Anthony, who'd been with Vincent for 15 years and understood that every request meant something, took the glass without question. He sipped, considered, then drank more deeply. It's excellent, boss. Why? Anthony's words cut off. His eyes widened. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Then Anthony collapsed. The next 30 seconds were controlled chaos. Sal was on his feet immediately, checking Anthony's pulse. The other men formed a protective circle around Vincent, hands moving to weapons concealed beneath their suit jackets. Call Dr. Marino, Vincent ordered, his voice ice cold. Now. And no one touches anything in this room, especially not the wine. He looked at Anthony, convulsing on the floor, foam beginning to form at the corners of his mouth. Sal was trying to keep him stable, tilting his head to keep his airway clear. Boss, we need to get him to a hospital. No hospitals. They ask too many questions. Marino can be here in 10 minutes. Vincent's mind was working through scenarios with ruthless efficiency. Sal, call Marco in here, right now. But when Sal went to the door to summon the head waiter, Marco was nowhere to be found. The bathroom, the kitchen, the office. Marco had vanished completely. Vincent looked at the shattered wine glass on the floor, at Anthony's body still jerking with seizures, at the other 5 untouched glasses on the table. Someone had tried to kill him, had come within inches of success, and a waitress named Elena had saved his life. Elena was in the kitchen when she heard the commotion, Raised voices from the private dining room, the sound of breaking glass, shouting. Her stomach turned to ice. Something had happened. Her warning had either been heeded or ignored, and either way there would be consequences. Carlos grabbed her arm. Elena, what's going on? Should we call the police? No. The word came out sharper than she intended. No police. Just stay here. Stay in the kitchen. Rachel burst through the door, her face pale. Someone collapsed in the private room. Marco's gone. Just completely disappeared. Left his jacket, his keys, everything. What's happening? Elena's mind put it together. Marco had poisoned the wine. She'd warned Russo. And now someone had drunk the poisoned wine. Probably not Russo if he'd believed her warning, but one of the others. And Marco had run. Which meant he knew he'd been exposed. Which meant whoever had forced him to do this would know something had gone wrong. Which meant Elena was in danger. I need to go, she said, already untying her apron. What? Elena? You can't just leave in the middle of... I'm sorry, I have to go, right now. She didn't wait for a response. She grabbed her coat and purse from the staff room and headed for the back exit. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get as far away from Vittorio's as possible, to grab Sophia and disappear. But as she reached the back door, it opened. 2 men in suits stood there. Not restaurant staff, not delivery people. Vincent Russo's men. Miss Elena, one of them said politely, though his hand was positioned near his jacket in a way that suggested he was armed. Mr. Russo would like to speak with you. Please don't make this difficult. Elena's hands began to shake. This was it. The consequence of her choice. She'd interfered, and now she would pay the price. I didn't do anything wrong, she said, hating how her voice trembled. Mr. Russo isn't angry, the man interrupted. He wants to thank you, but he needs to understand what you saw and why you helped. Please, come with us. Thank her? That seemed unlikely. But what choice did she have? I need to make a phone call first, Elena said, to check on my daughter. The 2 men exchanged glances. The first one nodded. Make it quick. Elena called Mrs. Chen with shaking hands. Hi, it's me. Is Sophia still asleep? Good. Listen, I might be late tonight, really late. Can you stay until I get home? I'll pay you double. A pause. Thank you. Thank you so much. She hung up and looked at the 2 men. Okay, I'll talk to him. They led her back through the kitchen, Carlos and Rachel staring in shock, and to a small private office on the 2nd floor that Elena had never been allowed to access. This was the real heart of Vittorio's, she realized. Not the dining room downstairs, but these private spaces where the actual business happened. Vincent Russo sat behind a desk, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp and calculating. The sounds of activity filtered up from below. Someone had called a doctor. Someone else was on the phone speaking rapid Italian. Sit down, Elena, Vincent said, gesturing to a chair across from him. She sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to keep them from shaking. First, Vincent said, his tone surprisingly gentle, I want to thank you. You saved my life tonight. That's not something I take lightly. Is the man who drank the wine? Is he going to be okay? The doctor's with him now, it's too early to say. Vincent's expression hardened slightly. But if you hadn't warned me, I would be the one fighting for my life right now. So yes, I'm grateful, but I need to understand. What did you see and why did you risk yourself to warn me? Elena took a shaky breath. There was no point in lying, not to a man like this. I saw Marco at the bar. He was crying. He looked terrified. And then he put something in one of the wine glasses, the one meant for you. You saw which glass? She nodded. I could tell by the position on the tray, and by the way he was looking at it after, like it was a loaded weapon he was being forced to hold. Vincent leaned back in his chair, processing this. And you chose to warn me. Why? The question hung in the air. Elena thought about all the reasons she could give, the practical ones, the moral ones. But in the end, she chose honesty. Because I have a daughter. She's 6 years old and I couldn't let her grow up knowing that her mother watched someone be murdered and did nothing. Elena's voice cracked slightly. I know what you are, Mr. Russo. I know you're probably not a good man, but I also know that if I did nothing, I'd lose something I could never get back. My daughter deserves a mother who does the right thing, even when it's scary. Silence filled the office. Vincent Russo studied her with those penetrating dark eyes, and Elena felt like he was seeing straight through to her soul. Finally, he spoke. You're right. I'm not a good man. I've done things your daughter should never know about, but I do understand the value of what you did tonight. You put yourself and your child at risk for a principal. That's rare in my world. He stood, walking to the window that overlooked the street below. Marco is gone. He'll run, but he won't get far. The people who forced him to do this will assume he failed because of something he did wrong, not because a waitress intervened. But Elena, he turned to face her. You're not safe anymore. The moment you wrote that note, you became part of this world. The people behind this, when they learn what happened, they'll want to know how I survived, and eventually they'll figure it out. Elena's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that you saved my life, and now I owe you a debt. In my world, debts are sacred. So I'm going to protect you and your daughter, but in exchange, I need something from you. What? Elena whispered. Vincent returned to his desk, pulling out a business card and writing a number on the back. You notice things, details others miss. That skill saved my life tonight. I need people like you. People who see, who pay attention, who care about doing the right thing even when it costs them. He handed her the card. Go home. Hug your daughter. Tomorrow someone will come to your apartment. Her name is Marie. She'll be Sophia's new nanny. A gift, fully paid for. But she'll also be Sophia's protection. As long as you work with me, your daughter will be safe. Safer than she's ever been. Work with you? Doing what? Keep working at Vittorio's watch. Listen, tell me what you see. The people who tried to kill me tonight won't stop. They'll try again. And next time, I might not have someone like you to warn me. Elena looked at the card in her hands. The number written in expensive ink. A phone number that would connect her to a world she'd spent her whole life avoiding. But she thought about Sophia, about the hospital bills, about the constant fear of not having enough. And she thought about Marco's tears, about how he'd been forced into an impossible choice by people who didn't care about his elderly mother or his own life. If I say no? Vincent's expression softened slightly, not quite sympathy but understanding. Then you walk out of here tonight with my eternal gratitude and $5,000 for your trouble. I'll provide protection for you and Sophia for the next 6 months. Make sure the people behind this know to leave you alone. After that, you're on your own, free and clear. And if I say yes, then you become valuable to me, which means you and Sophia become untouchable to my enemies. It means financial security. It means Sophia gets the best medical care, the best schools, the best chance at life. It means you'll never have to choose between rent and medication again. He paused. But it also means you'll see things you can't unsee. You'll be part of a world that's dangerous and morally complicated. You'll have to make hard choices. And there's no going back once you're in. Elena sat there, the card feeling impossibly heavy in her hands. She thought about Sophia sleeping peacefully at Mrs. Chen's apartment, unaware that her mother's entire life was about to change. She thought about the hospital bill on the counter, the dripping faucet she couldn't afford to fix, the thin comforter they shared because heating was expensive, the constant grinding fear of poverty. And she thought about how she'd felt writing that note, terrified, but also more alive than she'd felt in years, like she was finally doing something that mattered. I need to think about it, she said quietly. Vincent nodded. Fair enough, you have until tomorrow. When Marie arrives, give her your answer. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. One of my men will drive you home. Consider it part of the thank you. As Elena stood to leave, Vincent spoke once more. Elena, what you did tonight took courage most people don't have. Whatever you decide, know that I respect that. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and left the office. The ride home. The car that drove Elena home was a black Mercedes, immaculately clean and unnervingly silent. The driver, one of the men who'd intercepted her at the back door, said nothing, just drove with professional efficiency through the Manhattan streets. Elena stared out the window, watching the city slide past, the theater district giving way to Midtown, then Harlem, and finally the familiar streets of the South Bronx. Two worlds, she thought, separated by miles and by something much more vast than distance. When the car pulled up outside her building, the driver finally spoke. Mr. Russo wanted me to give you this. He handed her an envelope. Thick, heavy. Elena opened it to find 50 $100 bills. I can't, she started. For tonight's trouble, Mr. Russo insists. The driver's tone made it clear this wasn't negotiable. Elena clutched the envelope, more money than she usually made in a month, and got out of the car. She stood on the sidewalk watching the Mercedes drive away, and wondered if she'd just made a deal with the devil or been handed a lifeline. Maybe both. Mrs. Chen had fallen asleep on Elena's couch, the TV playing softly. Elena paid her the promised double rate plus extra, thanked her profusely, and finally was alone with Sophia. She stood in her daughter's doorway watching her sleep. Sophia's breathing was even tonight. No wheezing, no struggle. The butterfly comforter rose and fell with each peaceful breath. Elena thought about the money in her purse, the business card with Vincent Russo's private number, the choice that waited for her tomorrow. She thought about Marco, wherever he was now, running from the consequences of his impossible choice. She thought about the man, Anthony, fighting for his life because he'd drunk wine meant for someone else. And she thought about what she'd told Vincent. I couldn't let her grow up knowing that her mother watched someone be murdered and did nothing. But what kind of mother would she be if she deliberately chose to enter a world of violence and crime, even if it meant security, even if it meant safety, even if it meant Sophia would never go without again? Elena didn't have an answer yet. She pulled the business card from her pocket, staring at the number in the dim light from the hallway. One phone call. That's all it would take to change everything. But that was a decision for tomorrow. Tonight, Elena just wanted to be here, in this moment, watching her daughter sleep peacefully. Tomorrow would bring Marie, and a choice, and consequences she couldn't begin to imagine. Tonight, she'd done the right thing. She'd saved a life, even if it was the life of a man who'd probably taken others. Elena whispered into the darkness of Sophia's room. I don't know what happens next, baby girl, but I promise you, everything I do is for you, always. She closed the door softly and went to her own room, where sleep would be a long time coming. The wine glass had shattered, the note had been read, and Elena Martinez's life had changed forever, all because she'd chosen to see what others would have ignored. As dawn broke over the Bronx, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Elena sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee. The envelope of money lay in front of her, along with Vincent Russo's business card. In a few hours, Marie would arrive, and Elena would have to give her answer. She thought about all the ways this could go wrong, all the dangers, all the moral compromises. But she also thought about Sophia waking up soon, about making her breakfast, about not having to choose between food and medicine ever again. Elena picked up the business card, turning it over in her fingers. She'd taken the first step last night when she wrote that note. Everything after was just seeing it through. She set the card down, finished her coffee, and went to wake Sophia for school. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Elena didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table until the numbers on the microwave clock changed from 5:47 to 5:48 to 5:49, watching the dawn creep across the Bronx skyline through her small window. The envelope of money stayed untouched in front of her, a physical reminder that last night had actually happened. $50 $100 bills, $5,000, more than enough to pay the hospital, cover rent for 2 months, buy Sophia's medication for the next 6 months. It sat there like a promise and a warning all at once. When Sophia padded into the kitchen at 7:30, rubbing sleep from her eyes, Elena had already showered, dressed, and made pancakes. Normal. She needed everything to feel normal, even though her hands still trembled slightly as she poured the syrup. Mommy, you made the Mickey Mouse shape, Sophia said, delighted, climbing into her chair. Her dark curls were tangled from sleep, and she wore her favorite purple pajamas with the unicorns on them. 6 years old and still believing the world was mostly good. Elena wanted to keep it that way for as long as possible. Special breakfast for my special girl, Elena said, kissing the top of Sophia's head. She smelled like baby shampoo and dreams. How did you sleep? Good. I didn't cough at all. Mrs. Chen made me soup and we watched cartoons. Sophia attacked her pancakes with the focused intensity only children possessed. Are you working today, Mommy? Not until tonight, baby. I'm home all day with you. Elena sat down with her own coffee, watching her daughter eat. Every choice she made from this point forward would affect Sophia's life. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than usual this morning. At exactly 9 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. Elena's heart jumped. She checked the peephole and saw a woman standing in the hallway. Mid-40s athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, but there was something about her posture that suggested military or law enforcement training. This had to be Marie. Elena opened the door, keeping the chain engaged. Can I help you? Miss Martinez? My name is Marie Castellano. Mr. Russo sent me. The woman's voice was calm, professional, with a slight accent Elena couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, or Greek. May I come in? We have things to discuss. Elena glanced back at Sophia, who was still eating breakfast and watching cartoons on the small TV in the living room. She unhooked the chain and opened the door wider. Marie stepped inside, her eyes immediately scanning the apartment with the trained assessment of someone used to evaluating spaces for threats and exits. Her gaze lingered briefly on Sophia before returning to Elena. "Coffee?" Elena offered, more out of nervous habit than hospitality. "Please." Marie settled onto the worn couch as if it were fine furniture, completely at ease. She had that quality some people possessed of making any space feel safer just by being in it. "Mr. Russo briefed me on what happened last night. That took courage, what you did. Or stupidity," Elena muttered, pouring 2 cups of coffee. "I'm still not sure which." Marie accepted the cup with a slight smile. "In my experience, courage and stupidity often look the same in the moment. It's only in hindsight that we know the difference." She took a sip, then set the cup down. "I understand you're considering Mr. Russo's offer. I'm here to help you understand what that means and also to provide protection for Sophia, regardless of your decision. He said you'd be her nanny. I am a nanny, trained, certified, with excellent references. I've worked with several families in the city over the past 15 years. Marie pulled out credentials from her purse, legitimate-looking documents from a reputable agency. "But I'm also trained in personal security. I can keep Sophia safe while providing her with excellent care. She'd never know the difference." Elena looked at the documents, then at Sophia, then back at Marie. "Why would someone like you work for someone like Vincent Russo?" Marie's expression shifted slightly, becoming more personal. "Because 8 years ago, my sister got involved with the wrong people. They threatened her children, my nephews, to control her. Mr. Russo found out and intervened. He protected my family when no one else would, asked for nothing in return. I chose to work for him because I know that whatever else he is, he keeps his word about protecting families, especially children." There was truth in Marie's eyes, the kind that came from lived experience. Elena recognized it because she'd seen it in her own mirror every morning since Sophia was born. The look of someone who'd do anything to protect a child. "What exactly does he want from me?" Elena asked quietly, aware of Sophia's presence just a room away. "He wants you to continue working at Vittorio's, to watch and listen. The people who tried to harm him last night, they're not going to stop. They'll try again, and probably soon. Mr. Russo needs someone on the inside who notices details, who can spot when something's wrong before it's too late." Marie leaned forward slightly. "Elena, you have a gift for observation. You saw what Marco was doing when no one else did. That's valuable, rare, and right now, it could be the difference between Mr. Russo surviving or not. And if I say no, then I stay with Sophia for the next 6 months as protection, fully paid. You keep the money from last night as gratitude. After 6 months, you're released from any obligation. Mr. Russo will make sure his enemies know you're off limits, that you acted out of basic human decency and nothing more." Marie's tone was matter-of-fact. "You'd be free to live your life. But," Marie smiled slightly, "but you'd always wonder what might have been. And the financial struggles would continue. The hospital bills, the rent, the medication, all of it. This apartment with the leaking faucet and the broken heater, working double shifts and still barely making it." She gestured around the small space, not unkindly, just stating facts. "Mr. Russo is offering you a way out of that, not charity. You'd be earning it by providing a valuable service." Elena's hands wrapped around her coffee cup, seeking warmth. "What happens if I mess up? If I miss something important or make a mistake?" Mr. Russo doesn't expect perfection. He expects honesty and effort. If you see something, you report it. If you don't see anything, you say so. Simple as that. Marie's expression grew more serious. "But I won't lie to you, Elena. This world has dangers. You'd be exposed to things most people never see. Conversations you can't unhear. Knowledge that will change how you view the world. And there's always risk when you're dealing with people who solve problems through intimidation and force." "You mean violence," Elena said bluntly. "Yes, though Mr. Russo prefers to avoid it when possible. He's a businessman first. But in his business, sometimes situations escalate." Marie held Elena's gaze. "That's why the protection for Sophia is non-negotiable. Whatever happens, whatever you see or don't see, Sophia stays safe. That's a promise." Elena looked over at her daughter, who'd finished breakfast and was now playing with her stuffed animals, creating elaborate stories only she could understand. Sophia's laughter filled the small apartment, pure and unself-conscious. That sound was everything Elena lived for. Can I have until tonight to decide? Elena asked. Of course. Mr. Russo expected you'd need time. Marie stood, smoothing her jeans. I'll come back at 6 to hear your answer. In the meantime, I brought something for Sophia. She pulled a small wrapped package from her bag. May I? Elena nodded, and Marie walked over to where Sophia was playing. Hi there. You must be Sophia. My name is Marie. Your mom and I are friends, and I brought you a little present. Sophia's eyes went wide with the particular joy children had for unexpected gifts. Really? For me? Just for you. Marie handed her the package, and Sophia tore into it with enthusiasm. Inside was a beautiful children's book about butterflies with bright illustrations and fun facts. Sophia gasped with delight. Mommy, look! It has pictures of all different butterflies. She immediately began flipping through the pages, absorbed completely. Marie caught Elena's eye and smiled. She's wonderful. You've done an amazing job with her. She moved toward the door, lowering her voice. Whatever you decide tonight, know that protecting her is my priority. I meant what I said about that. After Marie left, Elena sat with Sophia, reading the butterfly book together. Sophia pointed out each species with excitement, trying to pronounce their scientific names and giggling when she got them wrong. Normal, beautiful, everything worth protecting. The day passed in ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because Elena knew they might be the last before everything changed. She took Sophia to the small park 3 blocks away, pushing her on the swings and catching her at the bottom of the slide. They got ice cream from the corner store even though it was November and too cold. They made dinner together, Sophia standing on a stool to help stir the pasta sauce. At 5:30, Elena put on a movie for Sophia and went to her bedroom to think. She pulled out the business card Vincent Russo had given her, turning it over in her hands. On one side, elegant script, Vincent Russo, consultant. On the other, the handwritten phone number. She thought about Marco, who'd been forced into an impossible choice and had chosen to go through with poisoning someone, even though it destroyed him. She thought about the man who'd drunk the poisoned wine, fighting for his life because of schemes he probably didn't even understand. She thought about Vincent Russo, who by all accounts was a criminal, but who'd shown her more respect in one conversation than most people did in months. And she thought about Sophia, who deserved better than this tiny apartment and constant financial anxiety, who deserved medicine when she was sick and new shoes when she needed them and maybe, someday, college without drowning in debt. Elena had spent 6 years making sacrifices, working terrible hours, accepting humiliation, counting every penny, all for Sophia. What was one more sacrifice? What was compromising her comfort with moral ambiguity if it meant Sophia could have actual security? But then she remembered what she'd told Vincent last night. I couldn't let her grow up knowing that her mother watched someone be harmed and did nothing. What kind of lesson would she teach Sophia if she chose money over morality now? Except this wasn't about choosing money over morality. This was about using her skills, the same observational abilities that had saved a life last night, to potentially save more lives. Vincent Russo might be a criminal, but the people trying to hurt him were clearly worse. They'd forced Marco into becoming an attempted killer. They threatened families. They used fear as a weapon. Maybe working with Russo wasn't about protecting a bad man. Maybe it was about protecting good people, like Marco's mother, like the staff at Vittorio's, like Sophia, from even worse people. When Marie knocked at exactly 6 o'clock, Elena had made her decision. She opened the door, and Marie read the answer in her face before Elena spoke. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. Sophia never knows. Whatever I see, whatever I do, she grows up thinking her mother just works at a restaurant. When she's older, if she asks questions, I want the freedom to tell her the truth or not, my choice. Agreed. I won't do anything that requires me to directly harm someone. I'll watch, I'll listen, I'll report. But I'm not becoming a criminal myself. Mr. Russo wouldn't ask that of you. Your value is precisely because you're not part of that world. And if at any point I feel like Sophia is in danger because of this, I can walk away. No questions, no retaliation. Marie considered this for a moment, then nodded. I'll need to confirm with Mr. Russo, but I believe he'll agree. Your effectiveness depends on you doing this willingly. He understands that. Elena took a deep breath. Then yes, I'll help him. Marie extended her hand and Elena shook it, sealing the agreement. Welcome to the family, Elena. I'll start with Sophia tomorrow morning. I'll pick her up for school, stay with her during the day, and have her back here by 6 unless you're working late. You'll find I'm very good at my job. I believe you. Elena glanced back at Sophia, who was engrossed in her movie. Does this start immediately? The watching and reporting? You're back at Vittorio's tomorrow night, correct? At Elena's nod, Marie continued. Then yes, it starts tomorrow. But tonight, Mr. Russo would like to meet with you again. To discuss what to look for, who to watch, to give you a phone that can't be traced for reporting, to make sure you understand the bigger picture. Elena's stomach tightened with nervousness, but she nodded. When? Now, if you're available. I'll stay with Sophia. She and I can finish that movie and start getting to know each other. Marie smiled warmly. I make excellent hot chocolate, and I noticed you have marshmallows in the kitchen. 20 minutes later, Elena was in the back of another black Mercedes being driven through Manhattan toward an address in Tribeca. The driver was different from last night, but equally silent and professional. Elena watched the city lights blur past, her reflection ghostly in the dark window. The car pulled up in front of a renovated warehouse building, all exposed brick and massive windows. The driver opened her door. Penthouse, Mr. Russo is expecting you. The elevator required a key card to access the top floor. When the doors opened, Elena stepped into a space that looked like something from an architecture magazine. Soaring ceilings, minimalist furniture, artwork that was probably worth more than Elena had earned in her entire life. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, lights stretching to the horizon. Vincent Russo stood by those windows, holding a glass of wine, looking out at his domain. He turned when he heard the elevator, and his expression softened into something almost welcoming. Elena, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would agree. He gestured to a seating area with cream-colored leather couches. Please, sit. Can I offer you anything? Wine? Water? Coffee? Water, please. Elena's mouth was dry with nervousness. Vincent poured water from a crystal pitcher, added ice and a slice of lemon, and handed it to her before sitting across from her. He'd changed from last night's suit into dark slacks and a casual button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. More human somehow, less intimidating. Marie told me your conditions. I agree to all of them. Vincent's tone was businesslike but not cold. Sophia's safety and your autonomy are paramount. I meant what I said about debts. You saved my life. That creates an obligation I take seriously. How is the man who drank the wine? Anthony? Elena asked quietly. Vincent's expression flickered with something that might have been grief or anger or both. He's alive. Stable. The doctor says he'll recover fully, though it was close. Very close. He took a sip of his wine. Anthony's been with me for 15 years. He has 3 children, a wife he adores. If you hadn't warned me if I'd drunk that wine, Anthony would still be healthy and I'd be the one in a hospital bed. Or dead. I'm glad he'll be okay. So am I. He's a good man, despite working for someone like me. Vincent set down his glass. Elena, I want to be honest with you about what you're agreeing to. The people who orchestrated last night's attempt, they're called the Castellano family. They've been trying to take over my operations for the past 2 years. This was their boldest move yet, which means they're getting desperate or confident. Probably both. Elena listened, her water glass cool against her palms. They got to Marco by threatening his mother. She's elderly, living in a nursing home in Queens. They told Marco they'd hurt her unless he poisoned my wine. Marco loved his mother more than anything. Vincent's voice held genuine sadness. He made a choice I understand, even if I can't forgive it. He's disappeared, which is probably for the best. The Castellanos will assume he botched the job, not that someone warned me. But eventually they'll try again, Elena said. Yes. And next time they might be smarter about it. Which is where you come in. Vincent leaned forward slightly. You notice things others don't. The way Marco was nervous. The way he handled the wine. Those details saved my life. I need you to keep noticing. When someone's behavior changes, when something feels wrong, when you see anything unusual at the restaurant, you tell me, and I can prepare. What kind of things should I watch for? Anything out of the ordinary. New staff members who seem too interested in my schedule. Regular customers who suddenly start asking questions. Deliveries at unusual times. Conversations that stop when you enter a room. Vincent pulled out a sleek smartphone and handed it to her. This phone is secure. Only 3 numbers are programmed. Mine, Marie's, and a third person you can call in absolute emergencies. You text me anything you observe, no matter how small it seems. I'll determine what's important. Elena took the phone, feeling its weight. This was real. This was actually happening. There's something else you should know, Vincent continued. The corruption goes beyond the Castellanos. They have people in the police department, in city government, possibly in federal agencies. That's how they knew my schedule. How they knew I'd be at Vittorio's last night. Someone on the inside told them. So we can't trust the police. No, which makes this more complicated. I have a few contacts who are clean, but very few. Vincent's expression was grim. This is why your observations are so valuable. You're an outsider to all of this. You have no stake in the power games, no reason to be corrupted. You see clearly because you're not part of the fog. Elena absorbed this information, trying to process the complexity of what she'd stepped into. What happens when you find out who's behind it? Who in your organization is feeding information to the Castellanos? That's not something you need to worry about. Your job is observation and reporting only. What happens after is my responsibility, not yours. Vincent's tone was firm. I promised you wouldn't be asked to do anything that compromises your morals. I meant that. They talked for another hour. Vincent explained the key people at Vittorio's to watch, the patterns to notice, the subtle signs of trouble. He told her about the Castellano family's known associates, showed her photos so she'd recognize them if they appeared at the restaurant. He explained how to send coded texts if she couldn't safely type clearly. Throughout it all, Vincent treated her with a respect that Elena hadn't expected, not as a subordinate or an employee, but as a partner in something important. He asked her opinion on security measures at the restaurant, listened when she pointed out blind spots in the layout, valued her perspective. You have a strategic mind, Vincent observed, as she described how someone could tamper with food or drinks without being seen. Have you ever considered doing something beyond waitressing? Elena laughed, but it was bitter. I've considered lots of things, but when you're a single mother without a degree, your options narrow pretty quickly. I'm lucky to have the job at Vittorio's. You're not lucky. You work hard, you're intelligent, and you pay attention. That's not luck, that's skill. Vincent stood, moving to the windows again. After this situation is resolved, if you want, I can help you find opportunities. Real ones. Not charity. Just opening doors that are usually closed to people without connections. Why would you do that? He turned to face her. Because I believe in repaying debts. Because talent shouldn't be wasted due to circumstance. And because despite everything I am, I respect people who have principles and act on them. He paused. My own daughter is about Sophia's age. I see her twice a month when her mother permits it. Every time I look at her, I think about the world she's growing up in, the example I'm setting. You told me you couldn't let Sophia grow up knowing you did nothing. I understand that more than you know. The vulnerability in his voice surprised Elena. This was Vincent Russo, supposedly one of the most dangerous men in New York, talking about his daughter with the same mixture of love and fear that Elena felt for Sophia. Maybe that was the thing about people, Elena thought. Nobody was just one thing. Vincent Russo was a criminal and a father. Marco had been a loyal employee and a desperate son. Elena herself was a struggling waitress and now an informant for the Mafia. People contained multitudes, contradictions, impossible choices that made sense only to them. I should get back to Sophia, Elena said finally, standing. Tomorrow I'll start paying closer attention at work. Be careful, Vincent warned. Don't change your behavior noticeably. Don't ask unusual questions or seem too interested in things. Just do what you've always done. But now you'll know what to look for. I understand. As Elena headed toward the elevator, Vincent called after her. Elena, thank you for last night and for agreeing to this. You're giving me a chance to protect not just myself but everyone who works for me, everyone who depends on me. That matters. The elevator doors closed on his genuine gratitude, and Elena descended back to street level, back to her world. The Mercedes waited to take her home. When she arrived at her apartment, she found Sophia asleep on the couch, covered with a blanket, and Marie reading quietly in a chair nearby. The butterfly book lay open on the coffee table, and 2 empty mugs suggested that promised hot chocolate had been delivered. She's wonderful, Marie whispered. Smart, funny, kind. You've raised an amazing little girl. She's my whole world, Elena whispered back. I know. That's why I'll protect her with my life if necessary. Marie stood gathering her things. I'll be here at 7:30 tomorrow morning. We'll establish a routine. Let Sophia get comfortable with me. Within a week, she'll think I'm just a really nice babysitter who happens to be around a lot. After Marie left, Elena carried Sophia to bed, tucking her in carefully. She stood in the doorway watching her daughter sleep and wondered what she'd really agreed to tonight. Tomorrow she'd return to Vittorio's not just as a waitress but as Vincent Russo's eyes and ears. She'd watch her co-workers for signs of betrayal, listen to conversations for hints of conspiracy. notice details that could mean the difference between life and death. She'd entered a world of shadows and secrets, all to give her daughter a better life. Elena hoped desperately that it would be worth it, that she'd made the right choice, that doing the right thing wouldn't cost her everything. She closed Sophia's door softly and went to prepare her uniform for tomorrow's shift at Vittorio's, where everything was different now, and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. Marie became part of Sophia's daily routine, arriving each morning with breakfast pastries and stories that made Sophia laugh. Elena worked her shifts at Vittorio's with heightened awareness, noticing everything while appearing to notice nothing. The money Vincent provided changed their lives immediately. Elena paid the hospital bill in full, seeing the relief on the billing department's face when she handed over the check. She fixed the leaking faucet, bought Sophia new shoes, filled prescriptions without checking her bank account first. Small luxuries that felt enormous, but the work was harder than she'd expected. Every conversation she overheard, every unusual patron, every deviation from routine went into careful text messages to Vincent's secure phone. Most turned out to be nothing. A supplier changing delivery times, a regular customer bringing a new business associate, kitchen staff gossiping about their personal lives. Then, on a rainy Thursday evening, Elena noticed Detective James Morrison at his usual table, but his behavior was different. He'd been coming to Vittorio's for years, always ordering the same ribeye, always dining alone, always reading the newspaper while he ate. Tonight he met with 2 men Elena didn't recognize, and their conversation was hushed, urgent. Elena refilled their water glasses, moving slowly, her trained ears catching fragments. "Next shipment," one man said. "They're expecting it Tuesday." Morrison's response was too quiet, but his expression was tense. She texted Vincent immediately. Detective Morrison meeting with 2 unknowns, discussing shipment arriving Tuesday, seemed stressed. Vincent's reply came within minutes. "Stay alert. Keep watching." Over the next week, Elena pieced together a troubling pattern. Morrison came 3 more times, always meeting different people, always discussing logistics and timing. She photographed his companions discreetly with the secure phone, sent the images to Vincent. Then Vincent called her directly for the first time. "Elena, I need you to be very careful. Morrison isn't just corrupt. We believe he's coordinating with the Castellanos. He might be planning something significant. What should I do?" "Exactly what you've been doing. Watch, listen, report. But Elena, if you feel unsafe at any moment, you leave immediately. Promise me." "I promise." That night, Elena came home to find Marie teaching Sophia to make homemade pizza, their laughter filling the apartment. Sophia's face lit up when she saw her mother. "Mommy, look, I made a heart shape with the pepperoni." Elena hugged her daughter tight, breathing in her innocence, her joy. This was why she'd made these choices. This moment of normalcy purchased with careful observation and moral compromise. Later, after Sophia slept, Marie spoke quietly. "Vincent told me about Morrison. We're increasing security around you and Sophia. You won't notice it, but we'll be watching. Am I in danger? Not if we do our jobs right." Marie's expression was serious but calm. "You're doing important work, Elena. You're helping prevent something terrible. But yes, there's risk. There's always risk when you stand between dangerous people and what they want." Elena thought about Marco's tears, about the choice he'd made under pressure. She thought about Anthony, still recovering from poison meant for someone else. She thought about all the ways this could go wrong, but she also thought about Sophia's college fund, now growing steadily, about the new inhaler that worked better than the old one, about not being afraid every time the rent came due. "I knew what I was signing up for," Elena said finally. "I just need to make sure Sophia stays safe." "She will," Marie promised. "That's not negotiable." Elena returned to her bedroom, checking the secure phone one last time before sleep. A new message from Vincent. "Thank you for your diligence. You're making a difference. Stay safe." She set the phone down and closed her eyes, wondering how much longer she could walk this tightrope between 2 worlds, and what would happen when she finally discovered what Morrison and the Castellanos were really planning. Tomorrow she'd return to Vittorio's and keep watching, keep listening, keep playing a game where the stakes were measured in lives. For Sophia, she could do this. She had to. The confrontation came on a cold December evening. Detective Morrison approached Elena as she cleared tables after closing, his badge visible, his smile predatory. "We need to talk about your new friends, Miss Martinez." Elena's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you mean. Don't play games." I know you're feeding information to Russo. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell him the shipment arrives Wednesday at Pier 17. You're going to make him believe it. Or Sophia has a very unfortunate accident at school. Elena nodded, her mind racing, but inside she was already planning. She'd been watching Morrison for weeks, noticing patterns, taking photos. She knew he met his Castellano contacts every Tuesday at a coffee shop in Queens. She knew he kept records. She'd seen him reviewing documents, always careful, always paranoid. That night, instead of reporting to Vincent immediately, Elena did something dangerous. She followed Morrison, watched him meet with known Castellano associates, photographed everything with the secure phone. Then she made copies of those photos and sent one set to Vincent and another to the one honest FBI contact Vincent had mentioned, Agent Sarah Chen, who'd been investigating corruption for years. The next morning, Elena orchestrated a meeting that brought together Vincent and Agent Chen at a neutral location. She presented everything she'd gathered, photos, dates, times, Morrison's threats against Sophia. The pattern was clear. Morrison wasn't just corrupt. He was orchestrating a setup to eliminate Vincent and take over his operations with the Castellanos. Agent Chen moved fast. Within 48 hours, Morrison was arrested along with 3 Castellano family members. The evidence Elena provided, combined with federal surveillance, was overwhelming. The criminal network began to crumble. Vincent called Elena to his penthouse one final time. "You didn't just save my life again. You ended a war before it could really start." He handed her an envelope. "New identities for you and Sophia. A fresh start in Seattle. Bank accounts, job recommendations, everything you need. You're letting me go. I'm giving you the freedom you've earned. This life isn't for you, Elena. You're too good for it." Vincent's expression was genuine. "My operation is compromised. Time for me to step back, focus on legitimate business, spend more time with my daughter. You reminded me what matters." Their final goodbye was brief but meaningful. "Thank you for protecting us," Elena said. "Thank you for reminding me there's more to life than power," Vincent replied. 6 months later, Elena managed a successful restaurant in Seattle. Sophia thrived in her new school, healthy and happy. When a mysterious college fund appeared in Sophia's name, unsigned, Elena smiled knowingly. She'd survived, protected her daughter, found redemption. The chapter of that dangerous life was closed forever, and Elena could finally breathe freely, knowing she'd made the right choice after all.